Okay, well, good morning and good evening to everyone. So, thank you for coming to our May meeting for Re. Today, we are going to continue our chat. I feel like 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4 out of In the Buddha's Words, the book that we've been following. I think that they really all link very well to each other and are kind of very much along the same kind of general theme of topics. And so, our last meeting, we discussed why do beings hate? And this concept of if every being wants to be happy, and most people, and when you ask them, do you want to hurt someone? Do you want to kill someone? Do you hate people? Most people always say, no, 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 I don't want to do any of these things. But these things happen all around the world every day. And so if nobody wants to do this, we talked about this last time. If no one wants to do these things, why do these things happen if no one wants to do them? And so this week, I think we get into a little more about sort of what causes the action. So we last time our focus was what causes us to hate. And then this week, we've taken two sections 3.3, the dark chain of causation, which is the dark chain of the cause of some of these unwholesome actions. And then we have 3.4, which is the roots of violence and oppression. And so after we have our hatred, which we learned about in 3.2, now we have these roots and causes of violence and oppression. So let's start with 3.3, which is the dark chain of causation. Good evening, Jenny. Welcome. All right. So, first, we have this excerpt, which is from In the Buddha's Words. And so, this is the entire passage that we are reading for 3.3. And so, I won't read the whole thing here because we're going to break it down piece by piece. But essentially, what is happening is that Ananda, which is one of the Buddha's principal disciples, is talking to the Buddha, and the Buddha is explaining to Ananda what the cause or the chain of causes to some of these unwholesome actions that we have. And so we're going to take a look now at these different steps. Last week, when we discussed the why do beings hate, there was a very much a step by step. One thing caused another thing, that thing then caused something else, that thing then caused something else. And so we'll see that again here as the Buddha explains more about this dark chain of causation. So, before we dig a little bit deeper, there are three concepts that I want to bring up that will help frame the context of what the Buddha says. And so, one is pursuit. We will see that in the first sentence, the Buddha says, "In dependence upon feeling, there is craving. In dependence upon craving, there is pursuit." So I guess in the second piece of this, so after craving, there is a dependence on the pursuit of those things that we crave. And in this term, when we look at pursuit and the Pali word that we were using for pursuit, or that we use pursuit to explain, it are the objects of pursuit, such as physical forms, etc. So these are the things in our lives that once we have this attachment or dependence to them, we then pursue them. These either may it be a physical form, may it be money, may it be power. There are things that we then pursue once we crave them. So that's our first thing to think about as we continue through. Next is the thought of gain. And so gain comes after pursuit here in our passage, where we say craving, there is pursuit, independence upon pursuit, there is gain, and then independence upon gain, there is decision making. So gain here is the gaining of such objects. So we were pursuing these objects, physical objects, other objects such as money, power, and then the gain is us actually getting those things. But once we have them, of course, that is not where the story ends, which we will go through in a second. But once we have these things that we are pursuing, our thirst doesn't end there, and it leads to more things. All right. And then next is this idea of decision making. Decision making. So we know that then the gain led to decision making. And decision making here is deciding how much to keep for oneself and how much to give to others, or how much to use and how much to store. And so again, it speaks to a little bit of the next set of problems that develops once we have this one. So we had craving was the beginning. We moved into pursuit, which moved into gain. Now, once we've gained things, we have this decision making. How much do we keep of what we've gained? How much do we give to others? How much do we use? How much do we store? And we can think about this in terms of many of our gains, not just physical gains, but even things like power, and these kind of untangible things that we may also wish to pursue and gain. Okay. Um, any questions here just on those three kind of the foundational pieces of what the Buddha speaks about here? These three concepts of pursuit, gain, and decision making. Or any comments here? Okay. Let's move into the dark chain then. And so this part, I thought that we could take piece by piece and kind of talk about each part of the chain here. And so the first part that we heard was this dependence upon feeling that leads to craving. So the first link in our chain is this dependence upon feeling, which then leads to craving. Would anyone like to take a moment to think about what this particular piece of of this sutra means? Dependence upon feeling leads to craving. How does this happen? Does anyone want to speak on that?
Lucien?
I think if we meet something good, we feel happy, and that make us want more. We want more, so make us craving. So we are so we all very take care of our feelings. We think the feeling is very important to us. If something good, we feel happy. If something bad, we feel angry. And something is in the middle, neutral. So here we just talk about craving, but sometimes if we don't like something, we want the thing disappear. It's a craving too, because we have this desire. It must go. It must leave. So it's craving too. So this is the second part of five aggregates. We will talk later. So this to human, this is a very important thing to us. Make us a lot of trouble. Yeah. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucian. Yeah, I think I like that you pointed out because usually when we hear this word craving, it's because we think of it in the context of wanting something or something that we need or we think we need and we want it, so we crave it. But craving can still be wanting something, not wanting not to have something. And so these conditions that can be unpleasant to us or things that we don't like will also can also lead to this a craving of sorts of not wanting something as well. All right. So after we get to craving, the dependence on craving then leads to pursuit. So this is part of what we talked about in our last slide. But once we have the feeling and now we have the craving, the next part that this takes us to is the pursuit. And so now that we have this thing that we want or these things that we don't want and we need to eliminate them, we now pursue either the gaining of or the elimination of these things. And depending, I know in our sutra here, when we get to the next level we talk about gain, but I think it's important to think about how what Lucian is saying as well to this, because sometimes gaining is we gain the release of something that we don't want, so the gaining is sort of the positive aspect that we're looking for even though we're losing something. And so dependence on craving leads to pursuit, and we have dependence on pursuits then leads us to the gain, leads us to gain. And gain, as we know, are these things that we're after, we're pursuing, and the gaining is the obtaining of those conditions. And then the gain, dependence upon, dependence upon gain, then leads to the decision making. And so I think, would anyone like to talk about this one a little bit more? Because I think that this is a really important part to stop and think, oh, am I, hello? Oh,
Yeah, we can hear you.
oh, I'm sorry. It was a little bit slow or freezing on my end. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and so,
Lucien or Jimmy?
yeah, decision making. Sorry.
Decision making, that's like a power. Yeah, just like a president, he has such a power. He make decision. Yeah, he make a decision to someone. He can be a general. Someone he can be a leader of a department. So that's such a power. Even or someone has much of money. He has the power. He can he can buy a lot of things. He can ask people to do things for him. So when he have a lot of things, he gains. He gains a lot of things. Then he have the power to making decision. Then he will be very very proud. Yeah, very, he think he is very very great. So after he want more power, one more he can control the things or people around him. So his desire is getting stronger and stronger. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Lucian. Anyone else want to speak on a little bit about the decision making and why this is such I think it's one of the important, very important steps of this dark chain of causation, the decision making. In our previous meeting, I think when we were talking about why do beings hate, and we've talked about this in different contexts, I think before, but these desires and the things that we gain, um, besides having this power to make these decisions, as Lucian pointed out, I think too that sometimes the more we gain, which is typically seen as a positive thing, especially coming from the West, where it's a society based on capitalism or materialism. When we get these things, it only leads to kind of the old adage of more money, more problems, if that's something that people have heard. Because once you have the power, you have the money, you have you're the leader of a corporation, you're the president of a country, as or the general of a military. Now this leads to more decisions, if not decisions that are even more stressful, because now your decisions impact many more people. Now what you decide has this sort of you're in control of a lot of different things, and so you've blown up your sphere of influence, and now that also can be a weight on us, I think. And so sometimes these gains that we seek, once we have them, end up causing more problems through all the decisions that come with them, I think, too. All right. So next, decision making. So we haven't quite talked about this next side yet. So after we have decision making, dependence upon decision making then leads to lust and desire. Now, this part, when I was reading this, definitely I had to think a little bit about the connection here. Would anyone like to speak on what they feel, this piece of what we're talking? Decision, the dependence on decision making leads to lust and desire. Because like I kind of at first was thinking they were very much parallel to gain, to this dependence on pursuit and gain. But lust and desire, I think, is a little different here. Anyone like to?
When I was reading this part, I was a little bit confused because I saw several similar words with similar concepts like craving, lust, and desire, and attachment. Also, sounds quite familiar to me. So, I don't know if there's any stark differences between the three, because I kind of cannot tell the difference between them and why they keep repeating in this chain.
Yeah, yeah. I felt the same way when I was looking, because the yes, I feel very similar. The craving, you got the right word. The craving part specifically is sort of this lust and desire, but I think they are a little bit different. Potentially, I think the way that I looked at it when I was thinking about this is that the craving I felt was something like that we initially kind of think that we need or want. Like we crave to have these objects, or the power. We crave to have something. And I think craving can be a lust or desire, but in this decision making, I think when we think about it as what decision making causing a different kind of craving, I think that once we have to start making decisions on things, we start to need to make them depending on the things that maybe we have a lust for or a desire for, and that then clouds or because we have to make these decisions, these things start to creep in affect our decision making. But I know it's after the decision making. So maybe Luke, do you have something here? Because I this was a hard one for me too. To think about.
Lucian also knows the concept of dependent origination. On the 12 items that we always talk about are different from this chain of causation. So this chain of causation is not that common. What do you think, Lucian? And so craving, attachment, and other words, yeah, because it's part of the problem of translation. And I think the dependent origination, the first item is ignorance or delusion. And So when you have like pleasant feeling and you want more, like Lucian said, then you have craving. You have craving for that object. And when your craving intensifies, then it creates clinging. So it's on a larger scale, or it's depth or the width is greater than craving, and then so cleaning can, I mean, it's more similar like to attachments. So if you do not keep your craving under control and you are not mindful, then over time it will become clean or attachment. And when you have this attachment, problem arises, because either you love someone or hate someone. I think they are the different two sides of the same coin. Because if you don't love someone and become very possessive, you do not hate this person. Yeah. So it's the same thing. If you do not keep your craving under control, then that means someday when you do not get it, you will have anger, disappointment, and also disillusion, something like that. Here, lust, I don't think it's like necessary sexual lust. It's just another word for greed. And yeah, so that lust, desire, greed, it seems sometimes they are interchangeable. And Lucien, have you ever read the chain of causation like this one?
Maybe I forget, but when I read this discourse, I think it's very sensible. It makes sense. I think someone when before he has power and after he has power, it's a totally different situation. Yeah, before he has the power, he want to pursue and he can, but only one people, just he pursued something, but after he has the power, he has the decision making. Many people come around him, such as if he is a king of, or he has a lot of money. Many people come and admire him. They say, you are so great. You are a very good people. I think it's a totally different situation before he has such a power. So after he has a power, he has another lust and desire, because too many people come to do things come to him. Yeah, that's make his personality change again. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Lucien. All right, and thank you, Luke, as well, for those explanations. All right, so continuing on our chain, now we see that the dependence, now that we're at lust and desire, the dependence on lust and desire leads us to attachment. And so now this is where, and this is what Luke was starting to mention. Jenny mentioned attachment as well. And so we're getting into this, the piece that we cling on to the things that we lust or desire. And I think that there are many examples in the world. currently and throughout history of once we have this lust or desire for something, we cling to it with this attachment, and how dangerous attachment to something can be. It can cause us many problems, and we've talked about this in a variety of contexts. But the attachment to our objects of desire or objects of lust definitely can lead to many problems. Okay. And along the chain, once we have the dependence upon attachment, then that leads to possessiveness. Possessiveness. So possessiveness is this need to, once we have something, whether it be an object like money or a big house or fancy clothes, or once we have people, once we have a wife, a husband, a significant other, people in our lives, once we have these things, it leads to possessiveness, this idea that we have to keep it, this belongs to me, and no one else should have this, no one else should have access to this. And so our attachment and our clinging to something then leads to the possessiveness of that something, or even a person or land. That we know many wars have been fought over land, and the possessiveness that this is mine, not yours, and I have to protect what is mine and not yours. And so this is definitely something that leads on our dark chain. And I feel that we're steadily getting darker and darker as the chain progresses. Things are getting worse and worse for us, and so now we have this possessiveness, which I'm not sure if possessiveness is ever used in a good context. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I know sometimes things like gaining, desire. Sometimes we think about these things in a positive light, that we want to gain things in our lives, whether it be intellectually, whether it be professionally. Sometimes those are seen as good in a good context, but I think possessiveness is very rarely ever, if ever, seen as a good thing, to be possessive over things. So we can see that the chain is getting quite dark now. All right. And so our dependence upon possessiveness, what does that lead to? It leads to this word that's very hard to say, but it leads to the niggardliness, or stinginess. And so we've seen this concept through many of our sutras. So by now, I should be very good at saying it, because we have had this concept in many of our studies so far. But it leads to this niggardliness, or stinginess. So the things that we possess now, we have this idea of not giving it to others, not being free with those things, wanting to keep as much of it as we can for ourselves, and give or have as little of it given to others as possible. And so we can see why this can be dangerous for us, in living a wholesome life, because now we have this stinginess that develops out of the possessiveness. Okay. And now the dependence on this niggardliness, or stinginess, leads to defensiveness. All right. So now we've gone from the possessiveness. I want this. I'm going to keep it. I'm not giving it to anyone else. I don't want any of it to be gone. The niggardliness. And now this leads us to defensiveness. And so the defensiveness is this idea of defending that which is ours, that which we possess, that which we've gained. Now we need to defend it from others, and from and defend it from it being stolen from us. And the one thing here that I wanted to bring up, that I thought about when reading this particular section, was, I think it's easy sometimes to think of our defensiveness of, or defending something, but sometimes, especially when it comes to power, as Lucian has brought up, I think sometimes we're actually defensive of our thoughts and of things or decisions that we've made, or um, philosophies that we have. Because I think that this sort of also, we've talked a little bit in the past about religion, and how religion has led to a lot of wars and led to a lot of disagreements. And I think that this piece of it, when we start to get to the defensiveness piece, this is what we can also be defensive of our thoughts and of our philosophies and of our decisions that we've made kind of back in the chain. We can be defensive of those. And so I think this is what, when we think about politicians and people in power, I think that this is what often gets them into trouble or makes their troubles even worse, because we often see this idea of doubling down or reinforcing something that is bad, because now that I've said it, I have to now back it up and support it. I can't just say I'm wrong. I'm sorry, this is not the best. Now I have to defend it because I've put it out there and I can't be wrong. So now I have to defend that which I know maybe in my head is not correct, but because I've supported it already, I have to continue defending it. And so I think that this is can be very dangerous on multiple different levels. Any comments here? All right. And moving then to defensiveness leads us to the end of our chain. So, because of defensiveness, various evil, unwholesome things originate, taking up of clubs and weapons, conflicts, quarrels, and disputes, insults, slander, and falsehood. So now that we've gotten to this last chain, this defensiveness, this is what now causes us to act out in these very negative ways, whether it be with weapons, having conflicts, insulting, or slander. So maybe it's not a physical dispute, but just arguing, slandering, spreading falsehoods to defend something that we know not to be true, but now we have to support these things. It leads to all of these unwholesome things, unwholesome actions. All right. So that's our dark chain of causation. Any questions or issues there? I think I spent a little more time on that than I originally anticipated, but all right. So next, before we go into 3.4, there was just something that I wanted to pull out, and it was a little note, a footnote in our reading in Buddha's words. But the next part, 3.4, when we start to talk about the roots of violence and oppression, they come from and they come out of or are bred out of these three what are known as the three unwholesome roots. So the three unwholesome roots are greed, hatred, and delusion. And some of these I think Luke brought up a little bit before. So in Pali we have the lobha, dosa, and moha. Greed, hatred, and delusion are the three unwholesome roots, the root causes of all mental defilements and unwholesome action. So all of our mental defilements, these mental these things within our mind that cause us pain and conflict within our minds, and our actions that then spur or come out of these mental defilements are all caused by these three root things: greed, hatred, and delusion. And so as we move on to the roots of violence and oppression, we will talk about the three poisons.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm. So the three poisons. Yep. So so now when we get into the roots of violence and oppression, the passage here says that greed, hatred, and delusion of every kind are unwholesome. Whatever action a greedy, hating, and deluded person heaps up by deeds, words, or thoughts, that too is unwholesome. Whatever suffering such a person, overpowered by greed, hatred, and delusion, his thoughts controlled by them, inflicts under false pretexts upon another by killing, imprisonment, confiscation of property, false accusations, or expulsion, being prompted in this by thought, I have power and I want power. All of this is unwholesome too. And so, digging a little deeper into this concept, the first section of this I thought was very important when we first say that whatever action a greedy, hating, deluded person heaps up by deeds, words, or thoughts, those two are unwholesome. And what I thought about this is that sort of like planting. When we plant a carrot seed, or we plant, if I plant roses or I plant a carrot seed, I wouldn't expect, something different to grow. If I plant a rose, then roses will grow. If I plant this carrot seed, carrots will grow. If I plant through my words, thoughts, deeds, if I plant greed, hatred, and delusion, these things are what will come of it. These things I can't expect when I do things out of greed, hatred, or delusion. When I do things out of those, to expect wholesome results, because those two will be unwholesome. And the second part of this, sort of the longer piece of it, I thought two important pieces here. One is that it mentions these things are in that the greedy person, or the person with fueled by hatred or delusion, inflicts these negative actions under false pretexts. And I thought that was a very powerful part of this section of the sutra, that his thoughts controlled by greed, hatred, and delusion inflicts under false pretexts, because that's what our delusions and our perceptions do for us. Especially, they cause us to make decisions, to do actions, but it's not under the truth. It's not based on truth. It's not based on the reality of the situation. It's based on our greed, our hatred, or our delusion. And so it's really based under a false pretext. And so oftentimes we might do actions that we think are justified, but the justification of those actions are based on false pretexts, are based on untruths. And then lastly, this at the very end, prompted in this by the thought, I have power, I want power. And Lucian has done a great job of talking about this power dynamic, and having power and wanting more power, and what that can do to us. This thought of seeking and wanting power and striving for it. Any questions or comments about this section?
Yes. I think the false pretext is very interesting. When I read this part of this course, I have the same feeling. Sometimes even for me, I do something wrong. I know I do this because of greed, hatred, or delusion, but I not have so strong wisdom, so I still do that. So I still give myself a lot of false pretext. So when I read this, I think myself, I give myself a lot of pretext. Yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, Lucian. I can definitely say that too. Jenny, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think I do this very, very often. So I think I I give my anger so many reasons. So for example, I feel very angry whenever my father doesn't exercise or doesn't eat healthy or doesn't take care of himself. And I think maybe there's just a small part that I really care about him, but maybe in some part there's part of me that do not want to, because if he is not healthy, if he is feeling bad, I might have to take care of him. So part of me is actually selfish. I'm not really 100% thinking um, um, that it is for his best to do all the things that I want him to do. Yes, but I always justify my anger um, by yeah, by giving myself a lot of reasonable reasons. Yes.
Oh, that's so relatable. I think I have to for everyone. How often this happens where we have this we think that we are wanting something for someone else and that it's a positive thing for someone else. Like, I want this thing for you. You will benefit from this thing. But really, sometimes if we get deep into why we want these things for others, it may be the kickback benefits that it gives to ourselves, what we also gain from those perspectives. And I'm currently, or I just finished a book about bringing Buddhist concepts into the workplace, into your profession or and that was kind of one of the thoughts that was talked about is how when we do things for coworkers or we do things like I'm going to volunteer to help this other team out, or I'm going to volunteer to help my coworker because I know that they're struggling. Are we doing it because we really want to be of help to our coworkers, or are we doing it because we want to have the light on us to say, oh, they were so awesome to me, they helped me, and now I get the rewards and the benefits from being such a helpful person at my employer. And so getting to the root of these intentions, I think are definitely something that we do in meditation and through looking into ourselves. Anyone else? Yeah, Amanda.
So I just really had a thought slash question, and it's going to be very badly articulated because I can't quite figure out what my own question is. So you mentioned functioning under some kind of truth or the truth or some, I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but this has always been a bit of a struggle point for me because everybody has their own justifiable truth. So how do you know if that truth or another person's version of the truth is not exactly under false pretext? Because it's not your truth, but it's their truth that is in their head very justifiable, just as your truth is justifiable to you. So I'm just like confused on how to like determine what is actually the truth and reality because everybody's is different. I'm not quite sure even how to phrase my own question here, but I'm hoping that helps get an idea of what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I think I
See if that
definitely
makes
have
sense.
that. Oh no, it makes sense. I think it makes sense. Because you're talking of what my experiences and what I have and the truth that I have from my eyes, from what I've lived through, from my experience. We could go through the same thing, but the truth that we get from that will be different. You and I could go to the same, let's just for say we say we go to the same concert and we can both be at the same place watching the same thing and have two separate experiences, and both of those are true. I think,
Yeah.
and that's what you're kind of getting at. This, how do we get
Yeah.
to the truth of the truth, which
Kind of,
which
yeah, like
truth is the ultimate truth?
yeah, kind of, yeah. So it always kind of stumps me on the general like concept of what exactly is the truth, because I don't know. Like I don't know what the actual truth is sometimes. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because you brought it up, and then it made me think about it, and then I'm like, okay, yeah. So that's my badly phrased question and comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to answer Amanda's question. I think, like I said in our Tuesday night meditation class, truth is something that cannot be expressed in languages, and with our consciousness, distracted consciousness, and it's something that takes a long time to develop your wisdom and follow enlightened people's guidance, so that someday in your meditation, in your very deep concentration, you can, it's not a subject, me, understand the truth. It's like one. You, under guidance, you can reach that point. But let's make it less complicated. So if everybody agrees that it is not a good idea to take mental or verbal or physical action based on the three poisons. If everybody agree, then we can ask everybody, all right, you analyze your motivation. If you do this out of your greed, and then you admit that that's not good, right? So it's the common grounds. Most people will say, yes, I think if you have a lot of greed or hatred or ignorance, there's nothing good coming out of that. But a lot of people, they are very eloquent. They are not honest, and they try to come up with pretexts or excuses, reasons to justify. And the more smart, the more intelligent, the smarter you are, the better you can do this. So, sometimes it just depends on how you really want to analyze your own motivation. And we have no control over other people's mouths and the mental action. But as a Buddhist, we just want to be honest and analyze ourselves. And we are the heir of our own karma. And karma comes from, if you have non-greed as your motivation, then you have wholesome karma. If you have hatred as the motive for doing something, then you have wholesome karma, and vice versa. So you are responsible for your own action. And I'm not trying to have an argument with you, debate. And so when we talk about truth, we have to be very careful. You have your own truth, I have my own truth. Yes, that's in the philosophical world. Like the intellectuals, they always use their brain to come up with some theories, but they have never ever reached that point that they can really know the cosmic laws as explained by the Buddha. And I'm not qualified to talk about truth because I've never been there. So the reason why I want to keep exploring is that little by little, I have more faith in what the Buddha says. So I'm willing to give myself a try to see how it will turn out. And so if we can just analyze our own motivation and try to understand, like Jenny said, maybe She say, I want you to be healthy, but in fact, she just, oh, I don't want to take care of you when you get sick. And it's a lot of trouble for me. Yeah, I'm glad she's honest. Okay, I hope Tucson, I hope I can answer Amanda's question. Maybe not satisfactory, but yeah, hope it's acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives me more food for thought to think about. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. That was great. And thank you for that, Luke, because I think I often have those same kind of questions about, especially about truth. Yeah, that's a hard one. And getting to the fundamental truth. Okay, now we have a few minutes left, and there were some discussion questions that I put on here for today, and we don't have to go through each one, but just overall, I think Lucian brought up the five aggregates, and so that was in the second discussion question. So maybe we can touch on that one. So in number 2 here. I put that the Buddha taught that our sense of self, or I, is made up of five aggregates: our form, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations, and our consciousness. Why is remembering that all five are impermanent so important for us? So important for when thinking about the chain of causation or the roots of violence and oppression. Why? Because this was sort of something that I thought about when thinking of these things, like that, the impermanence factor, and that being a core part of Buddhist belief, and how that can help us when we think about the chain of causation and the roots of violence and oppression. You want to think about that?
Okay. For me, sometimes that happened in my life. Just like if someone say something bad to me, just like my boss, he say I work not so good. So because I have the ear, and I can hear what he talk about. So I have the ear. It's the phone, the first one, and I can understand what he talked about. It's the fifth consciousness. And when he say me perform not so well, I get angry. I am not happy. I am not happy. So it's the second aggregates. Then I replay his voice and his face again and again. That's the fourth the third one, perception. And because I repeat again and again, so I want to revenge. I want to say something back to my boss to defend myself. The revenge is the fourth mental formation. So actually, the five aggregates happened every day. It's just our body and our thoughts. And this is a situation when I replay his words again and again. So that makes me angry again and again, because I have no such strong wisdom. So maybe this situation lasts maybe 2 weeks. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe I go to sleep, and the second day I think again, and I angry again. So if we know that's impermanent, if I have such wisdom, I can let it go very quickly. Yeah, But because I think these things are so real, they are so permanent. So I let the trouble last several days, such as like 2 weeks. So it is very important. If we see exactly as they really are, they are really impermanent. So I can say, okay, they are impermanent. Yeah, why not? I just let them go. So maybe I am angry for maybe just 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes for for a wise person is too long. Wow, but for me it's very quick, 10 minutes. So I think it's very important. If we know they are impermanent, we can let them go. Yeah. So that's why it's so important. We know the 5 aggregates is impermanent. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Thanks, Lucian. Any other comments on that question?
Yeah, I think if you keep reminding yourself that we are composed of these 5 aggregates, which are in ever-changing states, and the implication is that we can be the person we want to be. So if Lucian changed how he thinks about the situation, and okay, all right, it's not personal. I don't want to take it personal. So my boss just asked me to do this in a different way. Okay, I will try it. And then next day, wow, Lucian, you did a good job. Okay, thank you. But I do it because I took your advice, and yeah, I'm glad you like it. And so it's not personal, right? So yeah, so but people try to defend their own image because they have this tenacious grasp on self. And if you have a strong concept or sense of self, then you start to see things that belongs to yourself and protect and defend. And Buddha said the process of pursuit is suffering. Why? When you are pursuing something, you feel anxious. When you get it, you're afraid to lose it. You protect it. If you are a very rich business person, you had to install so many security cameras, and in the end, you will have to bid your farewell to everything that belongs to you. That belongs to you. That is, you will fall sick, and you will pass away. And I'm only 60, and I have a kingdom, and then I'm going to die, and that kind of suffering. Yeah, so it begins in the pursuit stage, and the gaining stage, and also the losing stage. So I think Amanda can relate to that. I'm trying to get a job, and then every day I feel so anxious. So,
Thanks for calling me out on that, Luke. Thanks for that. Thanks
I
for
can
that.
feel it because I'm working very hard to help her. All right. So can I also talk about the third question?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, it's a very good question. Going down the chain of causation and also accomplish personal or professional goals, how can we reconcile the two? The major reason why people go down the chain of causation is their delusion and attachment caused by craving and clinging. So when you are trying to pursue your professional or personal goals, you have to be very careful about your motivation. If you are chasing fame, profits, then you are going down the wrong path. However, if your goal is to help people with your professional skills, then you are a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a person who is on his or her path to enlightenment. So bodhi means enlightened. Sattva is just a living being, a person. So bodhisattva is someone who aims to attain enlightenment. So I'm a bodhisattva because I took bodhisattva precepts. I vow to help people with what I have, skills or money or influence or power. So if you give me a lot of power and the money, good, because I try to be a selfless person, and that I will allocate the resources I have to people in need, and also try to use whatever resources I have to educate the public to help them become better people. So these things are neutral in themselves. It depends on the person who use them. And so if you are an influential person, that's good. That's good, because then you can use your influence to do something good. So yeah, if you can use your professional skills to help others, then you are qualified to be called a bodhisattva, because to attain enlightenment, ultimate enlightenment, you need wisdom, but it's not good enough. You also need great compassion. So yeah, the combination of the two make you an enlightened person. So helping others unconditionally is an act of great compassion. It's one of very important key components of being an enlightened person. So my suggestion is that if you want to be a teacher, then please be a bodhisattva teacher, helping your students. If you want to be a musician and be a bodhisattva musician, use your music to inspire people. If you want to be a physician, be a bodhisattva physician. But I think so many people are bought by big pharmas, pharmaceutical companies. They lobby the Congress to, try to keep the cost very high, not down. They are not bodhisattva physicians. I don't care about how smart you are. I don't care about how many awards you won before. If you have this concept of making profits all the time and not care about human lives, I have no respect for you. And I hope you become a better person in the future. I'm willing to work with you if I can have positive impact on you. So in short, as long as your profession or your job does not involve in killing others, like meat industry, or damaging our environment, I would say you can be a bodhisattva, some title. Bodhisattva, everything. Yeah, that's my comments.
Thank you, Luke. And I think that I know that we are a little bit over our 9 o'clock time, or 9 o'clock Central time,
I think
10
it's
p.m.
okay if you
Okay.
are not in a hurry to do something. Yeah,
Okay.
we can talk about the current events.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so the current events this week. I put 3 on here just for discussing this chapter. It seems that it's never in these. I guess it's a little bit sad because these last couple of meetings that we've talked about with why do beings hate, and then today the chain of causation and the roots of violence and oppression. It's so easy to find articles or current events that highlight some of these topics, which we can unfortunately think about that too. But this week I chose a few from different kind of perspectives. The first article discusses this 50-50 chance of breaching 1.5 degrees Celsius warning limit. And so for those who may not be aware, when the Paris Climate Agreement was signed, first signed, I believe in 2015, 2016, somewhere right around there, maybe the most recent one. They had a goal of keeping the world from warming more than 2 degrees Celsius, but the ultimate goal was to keep it from warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, because 1.5 degrees is seen as kind of a tipping point to where it will be very hard to prevent continual warming once we breach that 1.5 degree Celsius mark. And so that's kind of been seen as a tipping point. And now some new climate scientists are saying that we are now at this 50-50 chance that by 2030 or 2026, actually, I think it said 2026, that we will actually breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. And so there's that story. The second story about Sri Lankan troops ordered to open fire on looters and vandals as protests continue. So Sri Lanka is currently going through one of the worst economic downturns and economic recessions that they've had. Food prices, inflation, cost of living have all gone up astronomically there. And so the people have been protesting to overthrow the current president, or I guess he has resigned now, but the protests have continued. And so this one I thought I wanted to talk about too, just because I feel that there's a good element to this story of protesting or letting our voices be heard for good reasons, or for some type of unjustness that we see in the world. But then this sort of tipping point of, we have protesters who are looting and vandalizing, but then we have the government's response, which was essentially to shoot on sight. If you see, shoot first, ask questions later mentality. And so just kind of thinking about that from our own Buddhist lens that we would have here. And then number 3 is just the possibility of a nuclear strike. Russia says that it's all in our military doctrine. So according to Russia, they have a military doctrine that essentially says what their philosophies and what their policies are on using nuclear weapons. And essentially those are, if a nuclear weapon is used on them, or if they face some extreme threat from conventional weapons, they could also authorize a nuclear attack. And so essentially kind of what this article was getting at is that it's very unclear, and all of that justification can be based on Vladimir Putin's wants, desires, and perceptions as well, or it could be based on this idea of a falsehood, and this threat that he sees as a threat, and could authorize the nuclear weapons. And so, anyone have any comments on these 3 stories to get us kicked off on our current events discussion today? I know for me, go ahead. Sorry. Oh no, Lucian. Oh, please, you first.
Okay, about the first one, I think it's very terrible, but I think it's very strange, because if the consequence is so terrible, why the normal people they live just like these things won't happen. So I feel it's a very strange thing. Sometimes I try to use less plastic bags. Yeah, I try to produce less garbage. Yeah, especially plastic bags. Yeah, but it's a very terrible thing if the scientific say if the temperature if more than 2 degree or 1.5, there will be such a terrible things. Why we all live in the same way? We just pretend and anything won't happen. So that making me feel very, very strange. Yeah, that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I think this one, I feel like when it comes to climate change, because for adolescents, teenagers, and things of that nature, this is kind of I guess I'm diverting a little bit here, but the adolescent mind is not fully developed, and so the element of being able to see a cause and effect and what an action that we might do today, how the implications of that can be far reaching, they say is not fully developed in an adolescent mind. But I feel like when it comes to climate change, many of us live in an adolescent state because we don't think about the actions that we're doing and what that could cause 50 years from now. We are living in this, well, if global warming is so bad and the earth is getting warm, why is everything still okay for me? I go outside and it's fine right now for me. And so we keep on thinking that this is so far in the future that it's not my concern. But that's a flawed way of thinking too, because all of us, it should be our concerns of what we leave for future generations to deal with. And from what they're saying, and from what most of the scientific community is in agreement with, is that a lot of these things can happen or will happen within our lifetime. So it's not even this crazy far 3 generations later in the future concept. These are things that will affect us now, that are already beginning to affect us now. Hurricanes, typhoons are stronger, drought, food insecurity. These things are happening now.
This very important concept, that is, you are heir to your own action. So the reason why I want to do the right thing is that I know how karma works, cause effect, right? So we do not use like high moral ground, moral principles to blame others. As a Buddhist, I know how karma works. So if I don't care about the environment, I'm also create unwholesome karma, because I know why people don't want to give up fossil fuels. Convenience, profits. If you don't use fossil fuels, you cannot keep the cost down, right? So Germany, I think in many ways I call them hypocrites. They are promoting green energy, but they are buying energy produced by nuclear plants from France, and also using natural gas from Russia. So I think as a Buddhist, I know this is the right thing to do, and I don't want like damage or pollute our environment, because it's not a good thing to do, and it's from my own greed, right? It's from my own greed. I'm hoping to have a better life, and I don't want to care about what happened to the next generations. But if I know how karma works, wow, this is a very evil thought. Like, I just want to live a better life. I don't care about my grandchildren's generation. Wow, that's so selfish of me. And I don't want to be that kind of person. And I also know this kind of thought, like oil companies in the United States or in the Middle East or in Russia. Look at what type of people they are. They don't care about the environment. They don't care about climate change. But you feel sympathy for them. Why? In the future, they will reap what they sow. And so I do not get upset with people who are not doing the right thing. I just have sympathy for them. Okay.
And I'm actually very interested too, and maybe this is something else that you could touch on, Luke. But in the second current events, when it comes to this sort of civil disobedience or protesting that often happens, I was trying to look at this through kind of from a Buddhist point of view, because this has obviously caused some violence and some negative things that are happening. I think that the protesters, of course, have start with good intentions, and sometimes their intentions are then taken over by other bad apples that loot or vandalize at the same time when other people are maybe peacefully protesting or trying to get their voices heard. And so there's a lot of times this linking of the two. But from this perspective, and kind of it kind of goes a little bit into what you're saying about sort of people who are doing the wrong thing and not being angry at them, but having sympathy for them. I also think that I guess I'm having a hard time grappling with sometimes this anger that people feel mobilizes people for change in a positive way. Once people get to that point of being so angry or so fed up with an unjust action that they decide to do something of this nature, then that helps spark a change in the situation. And so how did we
Yeah,
how
I
do we
know.
reconcile
Yes.
reconcile that?
It's very difficult because the leader of a movement has to be very self-reflective and must be a wise person. So Gandhi or like Martin Luther King, they use non-violence approach, and that's the right thing to do. Yes, someone is doing something wrong, and we need to let them know, and we have to express our opinions. We have to voice our concerns. That's the right thing to do. But sometimes when the leader of a movement is not reflective enough and try to keep the followers' emotion in check, and when it turns violent, then as a leader, you have the responsibility to use your influence to make people reason and keep calm. Because when people start to hurt each other, you are responsible for this kind of action. And it's like walking on a fine line. It's so hard. So, when it's losing control, then the mob mentality thing. And when you have so many people and trying to ignite people's anger, then things can go out of control very easily. And so I don't think I have the capability to to be the leader of a movement, because it just takes a lot of wisdom, and so many things can go out of control very quickly. And so I can only say this is the principle. When you want something to when you want changes to happen, you have to make sure it's not out of your anger, because when your anger is involved, then it is time for you to pause, reflect, and before you get everything clear, you should stay the pause phase before you take the next step, because it's so dangerous when your emotion is involved. Then somebody is getting killed or hurt eventually. Yeah.
Any other comments there? Number 2. And then the third one, just on the possibility of a nuclear strike. This one was just scary, I think, in general. But I really thought that this particularly really showed sort of the development of this dark chain of causation that we were speaking about, because even in the doctrine, there's this kind of ambiguity, or this sort of not even a very clear determination of what tips the nuclear strike. The first half, if it's done to us, that was sort of okay. from a military perspective, when we're thinking about that, you're attacked by a nuclear weapon. We then use a nuclear weapon. Okay. But then the second part of that was, or if there's this threat of conventional warfare. So then this was the part that's very kind of basically, or any other reason that we deem valid to do so is kind of how I read it. Because it really wasn't it was just a, well, if we face a threat that we deem to be large enough, even from a conventional warfare perspective, then we will authorize the use of a military weapon. And so I just, I don't know. This situation seems like it's kind of devolving in front of our eyes, and I think it's such a unique perspective when I hear on our other meditation calls, like Leon speak about his friends that are in that are in Poland or areas that are near Ukraine and Russia, and then also kind of speaking with you, Luke, about being in Taiwan and kind of that kind of conflict with China and sort of the kind of aggression that we see from the outside and think, oh gosh, I hope everything is fine. But then you're like, well, this is kind of nothing's really escalated. But then I feel like, is this the same? Is this just seeing this situation and being very
I'm
scared from
scared
an
and
outside
away.
perspective? outside. Uh, but this scared me. This was scary to me. And then just thinking about this cause, the chain of causation in this. So
Yeah, I have some points to make. First, this shows how impermanent our world is. Yeah, if Russia has a nuclear strike and then maybe NATO retaliates, maybe the US got involved, and then Russia also strikes back, and it will be devastating to the world. So this world is not a good place to live. All kinds of conflicts. So as a Buddhist, we always say, okay, we have to make the best use of our time here to try to get enlightened, so that we don't have to go through this again and again and again. No matter how many times you go through the cycles of life and death, each life is similar, very similar from ancient time till now. So we don't want to go through this again and again. And the best way to escape from this suffering is to get enlightened. Number one. Number two, can we change the world? Yes, we can. How? Start from yourself. So because we don't have the power that the generals or the politicians have, and they don't listen to us. So we can only be a role model for people around us and change people's ideas around us. So if you can change your lifestyle, change the way you think about things, change change your habits, and start as one person. If others do not change, at least you benefit yourself, right? So it's a very safe bet. And then because people see you change, they are curious. They will also go through transformation process without knowing it, because they did or work with you. So it's kind of like you are influence them, but you do not tell them. So yeah, the best case scenario is that you become a role model and people are kind of influenced by you, and then make this circle bigger and bigger, and maybe one day a powerful politician will be influenced by you in a positive way to make it a better place. But if it does not become a better place, at least you have the opportunity to get out of the cycle of suffering. Yeah. So no matter what, we have to change our mentality, change how we look at things, and get rid of greed and hatred and delusion. Yeah, that's my conclusion.
Yes. I think speaking from a being a good role model, this is where I don't know if as a country the United States has been the best role model, even though we talk about this. We are also the country that has actually used nuclear weapons against another country, so there's always that. But I think that are there any other comments, questions about our current events or anything else from today's meeting?
I think it's really easy to feel depressed by everything that is going on in the world. There are so many scary things like conflicts, climate change, all kinds of things that I do not have control over. So I think I often feel very worried or sad or have a lot of negative feelings after I watch TV or read news. But just like what Luke said, I think we should focus on what we can do, what we have control over. And I think the only one thing that we have control over is our own mind. And if we can, and also if there were no conflicts, if there were no suffering, if there were no climate change, I think I think I would pursue the kind of life that is more sensual pleasure oriented. I would think that I will continue to have this wonderful life. I don't have to worry about making myself a better person. So I think I will not really make the best use of my time. So I think another way to think about those negative things is that they made me realize that this world is not permanent, and that I should not try to seek impermanence in this world, but I should instead try to look for something that I can take something more that can last longer. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to look at this too, and I think it's very very similar to something that Luke often says about people or situations that may make him angry or annoyed or frustrated, and using those and seeing those as opportunities to practice some of our things like compassion and impatience. And it's very similar to what you're saying too, that like without these things help us to try to be better, and to see that we can that we have something to work for, a life that we should work for. Without them, it can be difficult to exercise some of these practices. So thank you. So if are there any other comments before we end today, in case anyone else would like an opportunity to give a comment from today's topics? All right, everyone. Well, as always, this was a great meeting to talk and to kind of refill our cup with this community. And so I appreciate everyone being here, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. See you next
Thank
month.
you. Thank you, Quentin.
Next month.
Thank
See
you.
you next
See you
month.
next night.
All right. Bye-bye.